Hey everyone, it's Keeley here for Soy and Shea, and thank you so much for joining me for today's video where we're going to go make some roll-on deodorant. Now, I do already have a stick deodorant within my range, but I've been working on this roll-on deodorant to solve a couple of little issues that I do find with the stick deodorant. Now, when I first created this stick deodorant, there was that sort of really big push to have environmentally friendly packaging. People wanted their deodorants to be bicarb free, aluminium free. They also wanted them to be vegan friendly. And I was able to get all of that into this product. One of the things though is that I do not like these cardboard tubes on these solid deodorants. So I am slowly phasing these out and I will be resorting back to plastic tubes. Reason being is that these are actually quite difficult to use. If you've ever had to use this style of packaging, you have to push these up with your finger, and once you get to the sort of top end, it's really hard to push your finger up while you're applying your deodorant, which is pushing it back down, and it's not the easiest, most friendliest thing to use in these containers. The other problem I do have, it's not so much a problem, but because people see that it's bicarb free, aluminium free, vegan friendly, environmentally friendly packaging, many people make that assumption that it is then 100% natural. And unfortunately, this particular formula is not. There are ways of making it natural, I just don't have those ingredients. One of the ingredients that go into here is something called cyclomethicone, which is a silicone, and the reason it is in there is to help the product to actually glide over the skin. Without that glide, it's really sticky, it pulls, it drags. So you needed that, or I needed that silicone to go in here to make it a nice product. Now the cyclomethicone does actually evaporate straight off the skin, so there is no problem with using it. But because of that, I never have claimed these to be natural, and as such, my deodorant range has been scented with fragrance oils, which are actually easier to find the safe usage rates for deodorants on. But because a lot of people assume these to be natural, when I tell them that they are not 100% natural, I often lose the sale. The other thing is, because of all of the ingredients that go into this, these are not cheap on the shelf. I will admit they are not cheap when you are looking at other products, but they're not just a simple bicarb and oil that you see in some of the other really popular brands. They do have 3 odor fighting ingredients. However, I wanted to solve the problem of it not being 100% natural, and the way for me to do that and to create a newer style of product was to create this roll-on deodorant. And I can tell you, I am so impressed with this. I was hoping to have to, well, I was planning on having to test this for quite a few more months and wasn't going to bring it out till later in the year. But I took a bottle of this with me on our holiday that we recently did. And if you've not seen that video, I explain in there that hubby and I did a total, now it's just gone out of my head, it was either 40 or 60 kilometres, 40 kilometres I think it was, a total of 40 kilometres of walking around Sydney. We did 20 kilometres on another day, so we did do all up, more than 60 kilometres of walking. We've also done like a 5 to 6 kilometre bike ride, and all this time I'm wearing this deodorant and I felt confident. I wasn't self-conscious of body odour or anything like that. It was working so well. I will admit, in the first couple of days I was, do I smell? But hubby said, no, you do not smell. I knew my clothes weren't smelly or anything like that. They weren't getting stained. So I gave this some real good testing while we were on holiday and absolutely love how it turned out. I've also given this out to a few of my little guinea pigs out there, and they have all come back with super positive reviews on the deodorant and have said how much they like it and do actually prefer it over the stick deodorant as well. So today I'm going to show you how I've already got 4 of the scents made up. We're going to make the final scent up today. With this final scent, it will be actually split into 2 lots. There will be some which will be going onto the Soy and Shea shelves, and then some of them will be set aside for the DIY body care formula experience, because this is the formula that I am releasing over on the DIY body care website this month. those who are creators, if you are interested in this formula, it is available on the website now. And for my formula experience people, you are getting a bottle of this deodorant sent out to you so you can have a bit of a try of it. So today we're going to go and make this one. Let's go. Okay, so let's jump into it. There are actually quite a number of phases that go into this, and it's really important to keep them as their separate phases. The other thing with this is that there are some ingredients in here, in fact, probably all of them, where I do not have any sort of alternative ingredients for you to use. I have been trialing different things, and different ingredients can actually make this formula split. So this is one of those really, really rare formulas where there is not a lot of room for tweaking. What I'm actually doing here is I'm pouring some distilled water into my container here. So we're going to do a little water phase in here. One other thing I will also say about this recipe is that you will find that it disappears. I do not know how. I'm assuming it is through evaporation. So I always suggest making more than you are going to need. So for example, I made a 2 kilo batch yesterday and I was actually missing 40 grams. And I think a lot of it comes from evaporation and also sticking to the containers. So make sure you are always making a little bit more than what you need. So in there we've got our water. Next up, I'm going to put in some propanediol. This is a humectant. I do talk about the humectant in the recipe and why I chose this one. I do give ideas if you do want to swap it, but what the risks are with doing so. This one is just really nice and light on the skin. It doesn't interfere with any of the other ingredients, and it really helps to soothe the sort of underarm skin as well. Now the next ingredient I'm going to add into is a must for this. I am adding in sodium phytate. Now, I will admit it is a slightly more expensive ingredient, but it is really, really important to go in here. This one is a natural chelating agent. There are synthetics out there, but this one is natural, and it helps to bind all the metals and ions that can be in some of the other ingredients, particularly the water. It shouldn't be in the water because it is distilled, but if you don't have something helping to bind all those metals in here, the other ingredients can behave funny. So it's really important to use that. Next up, I am going to put in some glycerin chamomile extract. Now, if you can't get the glycerin version of this, you can make your own or just replace it with straight up glycerin. I have tried this formula with other extracts, but again, different extracts behave very differently with one of the ingredients, which is zinc ricinosinolate, which is one of the sort of odor absorbing ingredients, which is super important to this formula. I really wanted to add in green tea extract because it brings the pH level down of the skin, which is one of the things that you do for odor fighting, but I can tell you zinc ricinosinolate does not like green tea extract. So I went with the chamomile because that's nice and soothing and gentle on the skin, which I figured is really good if you've, you know, shaved the skin or you've got clothes like work uniforms that are probably a little bit rough on the skin, that sort of thing. So I went with that chamomile, but as I said, if you don't want to put it in, you can just replace it with a little bit of glycerin in there. Now I'm going to wrap my water phase up because, as I said, we do get evaporation. So we want to try and limit it as much as possible. So I've given that a really nice tight wrap. Let's tear the scales out and pop that back on there. And then I'm just going to make a note on top of the wrap what the weight is. And I'm going to go and pop this into my bain-marie. Okay, so the next step here, I have got some Perfumer's alcohol here. We're going to measure that out into my jug. And it is important to use Perfumer's alcohol or ethanol. You do not use isopropyl alcohol for this one. It has to be a grain alcohol in here. So almost there. I Just a little bit more, that's it. Now I'm going to keep my alcohol quite handy along with my water, because both of these phases may lose a little bit and we do need to top them back up. Now with this one here, we're going to add in our zinc ricinosinolate. This is why we actually need the alcohol in this recipe. Zinc ricinosinolate is a solid waxy product and it is only dissolvable in things like alcohol. So we're actually going to add this into our alcohol here, and then I am going to very, very lightly cover this to try and stop as much evaporation of the alcohol as possible. Now I say lightly cover because alcohol is so volatile and does evaporate off very easily. The first time I tried, in fact it was the second time I tried the recipe, once I realized my alcohol was evaporating off, I actually did wrap it up like I wrap my water, and I was busy doing other stuff while this was heating, and all of a sudden there was this almighty bang and the film had actually sucked in while it was heating up. It sucked in and then it just burst open, and it frightened the living daylights out of me when it did it. So now I just basically put a very light covering over it so there is room for this to actually move without popping open, and it will prevent a fair amount of the evaporation. I am hoping that the microphone is doing its job and is not picking up all the rumbling of the cars. There is a big car show going on in Caloundra this weekend. We will not get into it because it's really affecting business, but they are keep rumbling by. I'm actually surprised at how early they've been out today. All right, so I've just written down how much. I'm going to go and pop this into the bain-marie. So I'm going to pop it into my slightly cooler bain-marie. My bigger one gets hot quicker, whereas my bigger one just doesn't quite get as hot because it's got that bigger surface area, which is perfect for warming this alcohol up. We don't want to warm it up too quickly. We don't want it evaporating. We don't want it getting up to a boil. We just want it to get warm enough that it can melt that zinc ricinosinolate in it. Every so often I will go over and give it a little bit of a stir, but once that has all melted down, then we will come back and we will combine the two phases together. All right, so I can see that we are almost melted with the zinc ricinosinolate in that alcohol. So I'm going to move on to preparing a couple of the next phases so that we can then start building this up. Next up, I have got some more of that propanediol. It is split up in the formula, so make sure that you do keep it separated. So I'm going to pour a bit into this container here. Just try not to over pour, which I did. Let me pour a bit of that back out. That's better. And then into here, I'm going to put in some xanthan gum clear. Now I am using the clear grade, which is a little bit more expensive than your regular xanthan gum, but the reason I have gone for this one is because it doesn't get stringy like regular xanthan gum. You can by all means use regular, but there is a risk of it going a little bit stringy, a little bit snot-like. There's no other sort of nice way of putting it, but the xanthan gum clear does behave really, really well in this recipe. And the other thing is quite often with xanthan gum clear, you need less of it than you would if you used regular xanthan gum. So if you are changing it, you may need to adjust the amount that goes in here so that you are getting the same consistency. So I have just mixed that up in there, and I'm mixing it in this propanediol now so that it doesn't go all gloopy and form what we call fish eyes throughout the product. So that's all nice and dissolved. I'm just going to leave that to the side for just one moment. So I am also going to mix the second to last phase as well. You actually technically don't need to do it right now, maybe once the mix has started cooling, but I do it now just to make sure that there is a really good bond between the ingredients. I am popping in here some capryl glucoside, and I'm using this to anchor the fragrance or the essential oil blend into the deodorant, and this is a natural solubilizer. So you can use things like polysorbate, but they are not considered natural, whereas this one is. It's a little bit sticky and gloopy. It is a surfactant, which means it's a bubbling ingredient. You usually find it in things like body wash, but it works really well for as a solubilizer to bring in ingredients that don't normally adhere to things like water and oil. So into here we're going to put in our other odor fighting ingredients. So we've already put zinc ricinosinolate in there, which helps to trap odors that they can't get out there. This is triethyl citrate, and this actually breaks down the sweat bacteria. So we've got two ways that we are preventing the odor. It is not a antiperspirant, it is deodorant. So this does not clog like the natural system of our body, and it's very, very effective and a natural ingredient in there too. So we've got that in. And finally into here we're also going to add in an essential oil blend, and I've got one I am calling Active, which has got rosemary, grapefruit, spearmint and basil. Now you have to be really careful when selecting your essential oils. You do need access to the IFRA guidelines on these, because it is going into the underarms, which are quite sensitive, and near things like lymph nodes. Quite often the use for deodorant is quite low. Now the really good thing with this recipe, because I was a little bit concerned about it at first, was that we're putting in all these odor fighting materials. Is the fragrance or the essential oil smell still going to come through? And yes, it does, because the two sort of odor fighting materials are focused on bacteria and not the essential oil smell. So this will still actually come through into the final product. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a mix. I probably needed a slightly bigger jar. That's okay, we'll make do and try not to splash it everywhere. But I'm going to give that a mix so that it all combines really well, and that capryl glucoside, it's a really difficult one, that one for me, that's going to bind into that essential oil and then help it to disperse throughout the whole formula really well and hold on to it. So that is feeling good. At first when you start to stir it, it feels quite thick and a little bit sticky, but once it all starts to combine, you actually feel it thin out and it loses that sort of viscosity and becomes a nice thin liquid. So that is looking good. I'm going to pop that off to the side. All right, I've just grabbed myself a towel. We'll grab the alcohol first, and we're going to make sure that that is all good. I'm just checking the bottom of it. Yes, it does look like all of my zinc has dissolved. Going to pop it, well, first of all we'll tear the scales out. We'll pop it on here and see what I have lost. I have lost a few grams of alcohol out there, which is to be expected. So I'm just going to grab a pipette from out of the box, and I am going to top this back up. I know it's the alcohol that's evaporated and not the zinc, so we're going to top that back up to what it should be. It's not a lot, but it actually makes a huge difference at the end of making the product. So we've got that one topped up. I'm just going to cover that back up again just to stop some of that evaporation from occurring. And I'm going to grab my water. Now, when I first actually did this recipe, I wasn't actually warming my water up, just the alcohol. But I did find that, because it was just something I'd seen, you didn't have to warm it. But I did find that when you actually blended these two phases together, if your water hadn't been even just slightly warmed up, the it shocks the zinc ricoscinolate back into its solid form. So I just find it is much better to heat it up. I've only actually lost a gram out of my water here, but like I said, this is a recipe where things just seem to disappear from out of it. I think a lot of it is because it does actually stick to the containers and your stick blender and things like that. So I am going to top this one back up. That was the gram it needed. So I'm going to take the top off my water phase. I've got just a bit of it stuck on there. And I'm going to take the top off of here, but before I do, let's make sure I've got my stick blender ready. If you're making a small batch, you can do it by hand, but I do find I'm using your stick blender to do this. It just makes a better bond between the ingredients. What I'm going to do is pop my stick blender into the water, and then I'm going to pour the alcohol zinc ricoscinolate mix in while I'm stirring. And this is another reason you don't want to heat this up too much, because you want to be able to hold on to the jar in a manner that's not going to burn your hands. Now you do want to pour the alcohol into the water like so, but I am going to do a slightly extra step here. What I have discovered while making this deodorant is that this alcohol zinc ricoscinolate mix, it is a pain in the butt to clean. So I'm actually going to transfer my liquid into this other container, and what that will do is just make sure that it's all combined within this mix. A bit like when you're making a lotion, it's easier to clean out the water jug than it is to clean out the oil jug. So quite often we pour it the other way around, but you do actually want to make sure you're pouring that alcohol into your water. So I have just tipped that through, made sure I've got all that last residual from out of here. This jar is going to be easy to clean. This one will be now as well, because we've got that all mixed through. Let's give this a mix. All right, so now that I have got that mixed, you can sometimes see the zinc ricoscinolate starting to go back into its solid state. But what we're going to do is get our little slurry of our xanthan gum. We just need to give that a little bit more of a mix because it does separate a little bit. We're going to get this in here, and that's going to fully incorporate all of those ingredients together. So that is nice. Let's pour this in while I mix. So I've got a majority of that in there. I'm going to get the rest of this out. Let's finish giving that a mix in here. All right, I'm really happy with that. It does look like that zinc has incorporated itself back into the mix. I think it was because it is actually a little bit cool here today, and the actual space is cool. I haven't got the aircon heater thing on at the moment, so I think my mix, my alcohol and my water just didn't quite get up to the right temperatures, but it has, with all that blending, just actually incorporated itself really well. Now I'm getting as much of this off my stick blender as I possibly can, because I know we will be missing some at the end of this. Plus it just makes it easier to clean the stick blender. What I am now going to do is wrap this one up, and we're going to leave it to sit and cool down till it comes down to about 40 degrees, and then we can add in our scent and our preservative. All right, so this has been sitting here cooling. It doesn't take particularly long because we don't actually heat it up that high. Just going to take its temperature. I'm sitting bang on 40 degrees, so which is really good because I've got to go and get my shop door open. So let's get this one finished off. Just take that spatula back out the way. I'm going to grab that little mix here that we've got of that Capril glucoside and the triethyl citrate with the fragrance, just giving it a little bit more of a stir there. Let's get as much of that off as possible, and I'm going to give that a stir while I pour it in. You can also get the stick blender in as well, but I find at this point you don't really need that stick blender anymore. So I'm going to give that a good stir. Let's get as much of this out of here as we can. I'm going to need that smaller spatula. Let's go grab all of that out. Trying to avoid to put the orange spatula in here because I'm telling you it is difficult to clean this stuff off. I have actually found it's best to let it soak in a bit of hot water and then spray it with some rubbing alcohol, and that really helps to break down the ingredients, and then you can get them cleaned off. So we've got our scent and odor killers in there. Let's pop in our preservatives so we can actually make sure this has a good long shelf life. Now, if you are wanting to keep this 100% natural, as I do, you need to be careful with the preservatives that you are using. Most preservatives are in fact synthetic, man-made, but some of them, such as your NipaGuard SCE, is actually EcoCert for natural products. So it has been approved to be added into natural products and have that claim to it. There are things like GeoGuard. I've just never used GeoGuard. That is a natural preservative as well from memory. You want to avoid things like Liquid Germal Plus because that is not certified for natural use. So we've got our preservative in there. Let's give that a good mix. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually move it off the scale so I don't end up tipping it all over me. I am going to leave this sit on the bench and cool down to room temperature before we go ahead and bottle it. Now, normally I would leave this overnight, but because it is actually a relatively cool day today, I do actually have the air's on, but it's just blowing regular air, so that will also help to cool this down. So I should be able to package this up this afternoon, but it's really important to wait until this comes down to room temperature so that we're not trapping condensation in our packaging, which leads to that bacteria growth. So I've got that done up. We're going to give that a really good cover up like so. Make sure that none of that is going to evaporate and leave it to one side. All right, so our deodorant mix has been sitting here for the day and it has cooled right down. We are down to about 24 degrees, so that is the perfect room temperature for me to start bottling this up. Now, before I do start pouring it into our roll-on bottles, I'm going to give this a quick blitz with the stick blender. I do find as this sits here, it does get a little bit gloopy, so it does need that final stick blend just to smooth it all out. So let's do that now. All right, so that has come up a really nice consistency. You can see it changed its color just slightly from being that sort of little bit translucent yellow through into this really nice milky consistency here. Going to get my stick blender cleaned off. I'm going to get as much of it cleaned off as possible because, as I said, we do seem to, for some reason, lose a lot out of this recipe. So I always make sure that I am making about 5% more than what I actually do need. The other thing I do is when I'm making it up, I've also got my own bottles. So if there is anything left over, I just throw it into my own bottle, which I then take home once it is full. And then I've got my own supply of deodorant. All right, so we've got that all nice and smoothed out. We are going to need the scales. And I have got my roll-on bottles here. So I'm just going to pop that on the scale, tear it out. And then what I find easiest to do is just to line my little tubes up, or my little bottles up along here, and then very carefully pour this in. Now, if you don't have a steady hand for doing this sort of thing, you can pour this into a piping bag and then pour it in that way, or you can use one of those little funnels, you know, like the pancake funnel batter things. I should go and get it and show you what I mean, because that really doesn't make much sense, does it? One of these things, you can use one of these to actually pour it into the bottles if you don't feel that you have got a steady enough hand for it, or pour it into a smaller container for decanting it off into the bottles here. Now I will actually weigh these in just a moment. This is just the best way I have found, is to pour as much as I can and then measure them and bring them up to weight or tip out if they are overweight. So let's get this last one with some in too. All right, let's grab our bottle. All right, that's got just a wee bit too much in there. You don't want to overfill them, because once you put the roller ball in, you need to have that space for movement within the bottle here. I think I've been really generous with how I've poured some of these. So let's just top that one back up like so. So I'm going to go through, do the same with all of these, get them to the correct weight, get them all filled up. And then once we've got them filled with these bottles, in my basket here, you get a little ball. I'm going to pop the ball on the top, and then we've got the cap as well. And once I've got all these done up, I'll come back and label them. So we're ready to start bottling them up. I do have this one here, which is not entirely full. It was left over from that particular batch. I have actually tried doing it so that I make spot on what I need, like I do with everything else. And I always end up short. So now I'm actually just making it above what I need. In this instance, I need some smell me's to go on the counter. So whatever's just kind of left have gone into the little smell me testers that people can use. I'll get that one started so people can smell it. That one smells so good. It's really nice, fresh, clean sort of smell. So I've called this one Alpine. Rosemary, grapefruit, not Alpine, sorry, Active. Rosemary, grapefruit, basil, and spearmint. Really, really like this one. So now that I've got the smell me one done, so I know that's the underfilled one, I can start labeling the rest of these. All right, so I'm going to get my trusty piece of wood here. I do get asked where I got this from. This is from a local hardware store. It is for making staircases. So you know when you have your railing on the top of your stairs that you hold on and all the little spindly spokes poke in there. You can get them rounded, but then I found them flat, and it just makes it the perfect little thing to put these into. So I've got a few different labels here. What I'm going to start off with is the DIY body care ones. I know that I'm going to need at least 4 of them for the first of the month, so we'll get those 4 wrapped up, and then I'll leave a few extras for the rest of the month. I think there's another 4 to come throughout the rest of the month, so we'll get those all set up and to the side. I don't label all the DIY body care ones in case anyone does cancel the subscription, so that I'm not left with products with the incorrect labels on, but I'm pretty confident there will be at least 4 of them that go out straight away. So we'll do those, and I do have a couple of just spare labels sitting there for later on, so let's do those. So I'll grab the rest of them that I think will go out with DIY body care, and then these remaining ones will get labelled up for Soy and Shea. If I do end up needing more for DIY body care, I will just make a fresh batch as those orders come in. So let's get the Soy and Shea ones all wrapped up as well. The main difference between the labels is just the business name, and the Soy and Shea ones do have a barcode on them. I use a point of sale system just to make it easier to scan products when customers are in the shop. Got a couple of really noisy cars going up and down the street at the moment, so I do apologise if this video has had all that background noise. I didn't anticipate it when I was planning my filming, and unfortunately this event goes on for 4 days, so there's no other time I can be filming. So I'm going to get these ones finished, wrapped up, and then I will give you another look. All right, so there it is. That is the roll-on deodorant all done, ready to go out. My Formula Experience people are already receiving those through the mail as their subscriptions renew, and this one is now available on the Soy and Shea website as well as in store, along with, let me see if I can grab them here, 4 other scents as well, and they are all essential oil blends. I have done one called Armour, which has got orange, lavender, star anise and cedarwood in it. I have Calm, which is a really popular essential oil blend I already have in quite a number of my products. If you like the calamine soap, and what else did I work out? I'd put it in one of the other moisturizers as well. I know it's in the tallow, and I can't for the life of me think what else it's in, but everyone loves this scent. Every product I actually put it into. It's in the foaming face scrub as well, so I decided to pop it into the deodorant. It's got orange, grapefruit, bergamot, cedarwood and patchouli in it. I also have another favorite, which is Citrus Burst. This appears in the shampoo and conditioner bars, and everyone loves this scent when I do it. It's got grapefruit, tangerine, lime, bergamot and spearmint in it. We then have the active, which I have just done. That's the rosemary, grapefruit, basil and spearmint. And then I also have another one called Pulse, and this one's got tea tree, peppermint, cedarwood and eucalyptus. So they are fair, apart from the Calm one. Yeah, I'd say apart from the Calm one, they are all fairly unisex sort of fragrances in them. They're not too overpowering, but they do have that really nice aroma to them as well. So they're now available over on the Soy and Shea website, and as I said, my Formula Experience customers are getting an active version of this deodorant. If you are a creator and you are interested in the formula, don't forget it is available over on the DIY Body Care website. So thank you so much for coming along as I made the deodorants today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, why not leave me a thumbs up and any comments down below. And until the next video comes out, I hope you have a good one, and I will see you then. Bye.